Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. Um, so we're in Michigan and we are talking about petition to uh, not legalize marijuana, but to get rid of prohibition, otherwise known as abrogate prohibition. and um, in that regard, we have a few stories to, or not really stories, but some updates to mention about that. Um, there's some resources that might be helpful, which are there's an interactive map now to let you know where you can um, find petitions, where you can churn petitions in, um, and stuff like that. So basically, if you go to abrogate.org, you'll see all the new things that you need to know that's going on. But one of the exciting things on that front is the recent endorsement by Rick Simpson for the abrogation of prohibition. So we got this video. We're going to go ahead and just watch this video.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rick Simpson, and recently I was contacted by a man named John Roberts, who's with the Michigan Cannabis Cancer Project, and he was
Big shout out to John Roberts, by the way.
telling me about another gentleman named Timothy Locke, and
And big shout out to Timothy Locke.
he's got Mr. Locke. He's got a prohibition out there to abrogate prohibition in Michigan. Now, this is directed basically at the people in Michigan, but many other states as well. This could apply. So I would urge everyone to look Mr. Locke up on the internet and sign his petition. This is badly needed, and if they can get this petition signed, this will make cannabis legal in Michigan.
And not only that, but it'll also, be a sidestep of the situation in Michigan that we're already getting used to, but it's not very pleasant. Where legalization comes with regulations that are enforced by the police, and if you're outside of those regulations, then we're back to the old prohibition with you, and no protections are offered, or it's just total like felony charges and forfeiture of all your assets.
Especially for medicinal use. The simple truth is, no one ever had the right, no government or anyone else on this planet ever had the right to outlaw the use of this plant in the first place. And what's going on here at present is nothing more than ridiculous.
All right, so what he's talking about there is what I just said. Is first of all, nobody ever had a right had the right to prohibit this plant, to write laws that made this plant illegal and it criminalized the users of this plant. Nobody had the right to do that in the first place. Who who said that they could, you know, take something that's a natural thing that's on this planet, it exists before we came along and we discovered it, um and we discovered that it had medicinal uses. Hell, we discovered that it had more uses than that. We discovered that it had industrial uses. You can make tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of products from it. We already knew that this plant was something that you could use as food, superfood, in fact. The seeds are considered superfood. And you can use this plant for fuel. Not a lot of people mention that or talk about it much. And if you mention it to people that are in the ethanol game, they'll tell you that it's not very feasible. Well, they're lying. It is probably one of the most, let's just say that it would leave the least amount of a carbon footprint to use as a plant to make fuel out of hemp. So anyway, what I'm getting at is that There's no reason that anybody ever should have came along and said, "Hey, this should be illegal. This plant needs to be banned." Everything about it too, not just oh because you can get high off it, but we know hemp you can't get high off of that, but we're gonna ban that too. So if you don't understand what he was saying about weed, that nobody should have ever had the right to ban it, just think about hemp. If you're stubborn and can't get over the fact that getting high isn't that big of a deal, hemp, you can't even get high off of it. Just because it looks like fucking marijuana, they wanted to ban that too. So he's saying that what's going on right now is just crazy. Let's listen to what he said again about what's going on right now.
Law the use of this plant in the first place. And what's going on here at present is nothing more than ridiculous. When I look at what these governments and what they're trying to do here to control this, and they have no right to control cannabis.
So now what he's saying is that with the government's regulations, as these legalization measures are rolling out all over the place, we're basically the prohibition of cannabis is melting, but the first layer of meltdown is legalization, which if it don't come with decriminalization is still prohibition, with just like some lights shined on certain areas where people are allowed to do things so that commerce can happen, and it basically just to get sales out of the dark is all legalization does, in some cases it decriminalizes use, and it does decriminalize use to a certain degree, but it doesn't always decriminalize use and in possession, and it doesn't decriminalize, I could give you examples. It doesn't decriminalize use wholeheartedly enough. For example, easy example is people between the age of 18 and 21. Well, if you're 18, 19, or 20 in places where it's legal 21 and up, you can still go to fucking war if you're in the military and die for your country, but you can't legally smoke marijuana and you can go to jail for it. So there's problems there. But he's seeing these regulations and he's saying it's nothing short of ridiculous. It's nothing short of than a crime against humanity as well as the plant itself to still fucking make crimes out of marijuana while you're saying it's legal. And you look at places like I just read an article that Radical Russ wrote today, talking about the regulation rollout in the re-regulation rollout or the regulation rollout in Colorado. I guess it's the re-regulation rollout where they're gonna adjust the amount of plants somebody can grow at home indoors for medical reasons, and they're doing this also in Washington, or they already have like a antiquated system where depending on how many or what your doctor writes, you can grow a certain amount of plants. And in some cases you can only keep, you know, the more plants you can grow, the less weed per plant you're allowed to keep, which doesn't make any fucking sense. Let's just say that them I'm going to go back to what I always say. You know, it is nothing short of ridiculous. Thank you, Rick Simpson, for agreeing with me. This is nothing short of ridiculous when you say that you can regulate something and make sure that everybody follows the numbers and shit, and you're not being disingenuous. Because guess what? The fucking regulations before your regulations was that you could grow zero plants, but people still did it. There was still a thriving black market of marijuana everywhere. You never had a problem finding or like obtaining marijuana if you smoked it. So basically, all these regulations and restrictions and telling people that they can't grow marijuana even though it's legal. Oh, we have legal marijuana. Come to our store and buy it, but you can't fucking grow any plants at home. That doesn't seem like it's legal, does it? No, it fucking doesn't. So that's what basically what Rick Simpson's saying here is that these governments do not have the right to fucking regulate this plant the way they're doing. They don't have any business doing this shit. It's just a game. It's a big racket, and they're making money on both ends of it. Now they're making money over the table and under the table and behind the table and right in front of the table while we're still going to jail. And in fact, not enough is said about the activists like Rick Simpson and others who, and, maybe even myself, who were growing fucking weed while it was completely unregulated and illegal as fuck. That's the people that are the real activists. And now they're all getting thrown under the bus because obviously we were never allowed to make so much money that we stood out in the crowd. So if you make too much money, you're gone. Or if you show that you make a lot of money, then you're gone. Basically, somehow, uh, we're supposed to be able to come up with all the money to follow these really ridiculous regulations to run some of these like facilities growing thousands of plants and shit. Man, maybe some people don't want to do that shit. Maybe people just want to have the relationship with this plant that they had and it works for them. Not everybody wants to grow fucking thousands of plants. Not everybody gives a fuck about growing marijuana plants. Some people just want to like have a couple plants. Some people want to have no plants and just be able to smoke weed without having to worry about it. Probably every other person in society would be like, you know what? If it was legal, I wouldn't do it all the time, but probably once in a great while, if it was around and I did it, I wouldn't feel so bad about it. So I don't know. Nobody has the business to fuck this plan over. Let's go back and watch that one more time.
especially for medicinal use. The simple truth is, no one ever had the right, no government or anyone else on this planet ever had the right to outlaw the use of this plant in the first place. And what's going on here at present is nothing more than ridiculous. When I look at what these governments and what they're trying to do here to control this, and they have no right to control cannabis. So I urge everyone in Michigan and in other states to look into this, because if you can get rid of these laws by simply signing a petition, I think it'd be one hell of a good idea. So I would urge you to do so as quickly as possible. I think they still have around 100 days. They need to gather, as I'm told, about 350,000 signatures. And they've already got quite a few already, but they need to get all of these signatures in as quickly as possible. So again, I'm urging you to look into this and to sign this petition, and let's set this plant free. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, there you have it, man. That's one hell of an endorsement right there. So, you know, if you haven't already done so, uh, look up, and if you're from Michigan, obviously, if you're from anywhere, you can go to here, abrogate.org, and just look into this. Maybe you can probably follow this model for your own state. Who knows? Uh, I'm talking to you, Colorado. Like, this is the next thing, guys. This is the next phase in like I said earlier, the iceberg of prohibition melting down, and then the green pastures that we'll see come from that later on will be people wanting to get rid of fucking prohibition, because no matter how you do it, no matter how good you think you are at legalizing marijuana, there's still going to be capitalists that are going to want you to fucking be out of the way, and they don't want these home grows, and they don't want people running small businesses growing marijuana when they could have like RJ fucking Reynolds growing marijuana. So it's only a matter of time before those kind of super gangster mafioso type like hedge fund fuckers or whatever start thinking, you know what, we don't want to take over marijuana because we want to make an extra billion or two a year. We just want to crush everybody that thinks they're going to make a living doing it. And if you want freedom and you want to be an American and have your liberty, you should really realize that the only way around all that bullshit is to get rid of prohibition. All right, let's be real. And as much as I have confidence that it can be done, we cannabis, We can do this. Um, it's hard to imagine that we're going to be able to see this work this time, like abrogate, make the ballot in 2018. Who knows if Tim Locke is up for another attempt if this fails. And I don't want to speculate on it or be like a Debbie Downer or whatever. But, if in fact it didn't make it, you know, that's not to say that this isn't the future, because this is the future, people. This is what a revolution looks like. And it starts, this is just cannabis, but revolutions look just like this: real simple, real easy to understand, cut to the chase shit. In this case, it's just simply getting rid of prohibition, like they did with the prohibition on alcohol, which was a constitutional amendment. All right, with cannabis prohibition on a federal level, we're only looking at this thing called the Controlled Substances Act, which is just a treaty to the United Nations, and it's the only treaty. It's one of about 10 treaties that we actually fucking like honor that we have with the United Nations, and 3 of them have to do with fucking prohibiting drugs. So we don't really care too much about United Nations treaties, in case you didn't know what I was talking about there. But anyway, this is what it is. This is it right here: the agricultural, personal, recreational, medicinal, commercial, industrial, and other uses of cannabis in any form by any person shall be lawful activity. That's pretty much all you need to know right there. And this cool little part here, that it is retroactive, and that's the biggest deal, because legalizing marijuana is a fucking joke, and it's not a very funny one to the people that have these convictions or are in prison right now for marijuana crimes, or have in some cases you might see marijuana legalized and then you still have a court case to go to after it was legalized, and they're like, "Oh no, but when you got caught it was illegal," and you still go to prison. I've read about people in all the situations, and the only way to get rid of any of it is this. And if this ain't the year for it, it will happen. Even if we got to wait until like all 50 states legalize marijuana, and I don't think that's that far off. We're only like 5 years tops on that one. And that's a long term, like there'd have to be a lot of stupid bullshit happen between now and 5 years for it to take that long, in my opinion. Um but between now and 5 years, you're gonna see a lot more abrogation and a lot less legalization, because legalization is not sexy anymore. Fucking legislators are doing it now. You got New Jersey and Vermont. They're about ready to have a foot race to see who can get legalization done faster in 2018. I guarantee you that whatever one is first to come through, and we've already seen the one from Vermont. We're gonna look into them and we're gonna be like, man, that's why you don't want the legislator to legalize marijuana. And if you don't believe me about how shitty legalization can look if the legislator writes the fucking thing, well, all you need to do is go look at Canada and look at the regulation package they just fucking released. Look at California. Look at that regulation package. These regulation packages look almost more restrictive than fucking 100% prohibition. And believe me, for some people in Mendo, it probably is looking like worse than prohibition. So speaking of prohibition versus legalization, I did make a video about that, so you can watch that and see, pick my brain even further. But again, in Michigan, I keep seeing people in message boards and comment sections and shit, and it's the battle rages on, guys. And for you people on the abrogate side, I'm for the most part, I can say this. For me, I'm gonna be a fence rider. I'm gonna say that, yeah, shit, dude, like legalization, it's a mixed fucking bag, but it's definitely better than this right wing bullshit we're living under right now. And who wants to sit here and wait for the minute when Lansing decides to just cross out the word medical in their fucking laws that they're working with right now? and just say, oh, no one's going to say shit about this. And then the MMFLA is your fucking legalized marijuana. And I don't think, regulate like alcohol, don't kick in until 2019. So they'll at least get to have their way as long as they want. I think they got the votes for that. Shit, I mean, all they got to do is put together something that's a little bit less crazy, and they already have it. So there's that. But yeah, overall, I'm gonna say I'm for both. I'm more for abrogate, and if abrogate makes the ballot and they both get voted for, and everybody agrees that they both should be yesed, it's gonna really you're basically just gonna have an impossible situation with a lot of the things that are in regulate like alcohol. That's all there is to it, man. Are people still going to be able to get commercial facilities and do this and that? And is there still going to be regulations? Yeah, kinda. It's kind of going to be like there is for some, but there ain't for any. You're not going to be able to enforce it. They're going to have to incentivize those regulations, not de-incentivize not being regulated by putting you in prison. This is like the only industry where it's like that. You get caught doing something a little bit outside the regulation, well, it's a felony. You're going to prison, buddy. Do it enough times and you'll be in there for life. We Michigan never talks about shit like decriminalization. Michigan never talks about shit like, hey, maybe we should give the fucking caregivers a legal avenue to get rid of their overage. You don't never hear anything like that coming from My Legalize or fucking regulate like alcohol. It's all placating to the capitalist pigs. It's all placating to the fucking corrupt government that wants, taxes and fees to their gills blow out. And it's all about the fucking lobbyists. And the only way to make everybody happy, because believe me, in a situation like abrogate, that's like the fucking Koch brothers' wet dream, dude. That's it's as libertarian as it gets. No, the only taxes coming is over here on end sales. I'm looking at maybe, yeah. Basically, just like the guy that buys it at the fucking store is gonna pay like your sales tax, and maybe even the state can slap on some kind of a tax stamps tax. Who knows? It doesn't look like it. So I'm just kind of babbling on, but I mean, you can say what you will about legalization versus abrogation. I really, you know, I'm doing everything I can, which isn't much from where I'm sitting in my situation in life, but I would do everything I can to help abrogate, I guess. I mean, I have already. And just if you live in Michigan and you've signed the petition to regulate marijuana like alcohol, that's cool. I mean, everybody that signed it, basically, like there's different levels of people that sign petitions. And when it comes to abrogate, there's a few people that are very passionate about abrogate, and they'll be online straight up slamming you for signing that petition to regulate like alcohol, because these are people that have went to jail after marijuana was legalized for medical purposes, because regulation and legalization doesn't mean prohibition is off the table, and prohibition equals felony charges. So I mean, obviously regulate marijuana like alcohol has sentencing guidelines, charge severity written right into it. And we're not looking at like, from what I was told, and I don't know how honest you can believe just what someone tells you versus what, actually happens later on, because they arrest you and send you to court. And since there isn't a precedent, you might be the precedent. And if you lose, you might make it so a lot of people after you lose. So there's a lot of people that are passionate about abrogation for a lot of reasons. And they don't trust legalization. And I don't fucking blame them one bit. But I'm not that guy. I'm not going to go out there and straight denounce regulate like alcohol. Um, I'm going to embrace it and I'm going to vote yes for it. I mean, just full disclosure, I guess. I'm not endorsing it. I am endorsing abrogate prohibition. I am kind of endorsing my legalize and regulate like alcohol to a certain degree. You can say, "Oh, I don't really endorse that, but I'm going to vote for it." That's kind of a cop out, really. But in essence, I guess I do endorse both. And I think that everybody can be behind both. And essentially, I know that even some of the most passionate people on the abrogate side that are in those comment sections ripping people for talking about regulate like alcohol like it's some kind of good thing. I understand and I know, but I know that they even feel the same way too, that in the long run, even a shitty regulation system, which I don't think regulate like alcohol in Michigan is a total shitty thing. I think there's a lot of good things about it. Um, but you know, I'm from the Jack Harris school, man. I'm from the Rick Simpson school. Nobody has the right to regulate this fucking plant. Nobody. No government, no lobbyist, no person that wants to be a marijuana kingpin legally. Nobody. It's a plant and it has many benefits and industrial uses. And if y'all want to be greedy about this fucking plant, why don't you go get a fucking 50-acre hemp farm going or something, man? Jesus Christ. All right, that's all. I'm just babbling now at this point. Again, Rick Simpson, huge endorsement for
Hello, everyone. My name is Rick Simpson,
abrogation of
and
prohibition in
recently I was
Michigan.
contacted by a man named John Roberts,
Thank you,
who's with
John
the Michigan
Roberts,
Cannabis
and thank
Cancer
you, Tim
Project.
Locke, and thank you, Rick Simpson.